It's unconscionable what's been done. And Dr. Fauci has misled the American public, in my opinion, on many issues, but in particular, when he is dismissing hydroxychloroquine, and I have heard him myself in interviews dismiss it and blow it off. And he knows the potency of it as an antiviral agent, and then turns around and calls remdesivir after one study that only shortened hospital stay 4 days and said remdesivir would be the new gold standard. I just about exploded in front of the television. I was so angry.
Well, the voice there of Dr. Vliet on War Room Pandemic last week. It is Tuesday, July the 28th, the year of our Lord 2020, and War Room Pandemic comes to you again from the Trump International Hotel downtown in Washington, D.C. Episode 303 of War Room Pandemic starts now on Newsmax TV, later on in the day on the John Fredericks Radio Network, on americasvoice.news, and blown through the CCP's firewalls by G News and GTV. I'm Raheem Kassam. We've got Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon. We're here because of the Falkirk Center's Freedom Summit here at the Trump International Hotel, protecting the Republic from all enemies, foreign and domestic. I want to say thanks to our whole production team, to the hotel, and to the Falkirk Center for putting this on. Dave Bratt, Charlie Kirk, and the team. Steve?
Yeah, I want to throw a thank you to Jerry Falwell, Liberty University, the Falkirk Center. They've really taken the bull by the horns here and are focused on the biggest issue of our time, the Chinese Communist Party and what it's done to the world. And I think it's amazing to see this rejuvenation, Raheem, of people focused on the dangers of communism, both here domestically and abroad. The scourge of the 20th century hasn't left us. And part of that scourge is the CCP virus. Remember, this is not COVID-19. This is not SARS-2. There's all types of technical terms. It's not the Kung flu. It's not the Wuhan virus. It's not the Chinese virus. It's the Chinese Communist Party's virus. And I'm really proud of you guys. I was on the ship the other day, and you guys did the whole first segment because you're much more technically astute of doing this on hydroxy. It was Jack Maxey and 3 or 4 prominent doctors for the entire hour. President of the United States tweeted it out last night. And Raheem, I was on CNBC this morning, but we were also, I guess, simultaneously on Good Morning America. What happened? Stephanopoulos was looking at my lovely visage.
Well, I was busy watching you. I didn't see the other you. Why don't we roll the clip and find out what happened? Let's roll it.
From the president, also accusing you of misleading the public on many issues. You've been at the NIH since 1984. Yeah. You've advised 6 presidents. Can you continue to do your job when the president of the United States is publicly questioning your credibility in this way?
You know, George, I don't know how to address that. I'm just going to certainly continue doing my job. I don't tweet. I don't even read them. So I don't really want to go there. I just will continue to do my job no matter what comes out, because I think it's very important. We're in the middle of a crisis with regard to an epidemic, a pandemic. This is what I do. This is what I've been trained for my entire professional life, and I'll continue to do it.
To the charge you've been misleading the American public?
I have not been misleading the American public under any circumstances.
Let's talk. Cut means cut.
There we go. Live production, ladies and gentlemen.
Want to thank, don't know if that translates to the team here in Denver. Great clip, though. This is both a technology story and it's a medical story. This is about the power of social media. It's about the President of the United States. It's about free speech. And it's about, going back to our show, about the hydroxychloroquine and medical experts. And the suppression of voices when the establishment doesn't want to hear something, right? And particularly when they set up a bunch of rules. This is when I talked about the deconstruction of the administrative state. They're saying, oh, Bannon want to get rid of it. No. These things have to be rejuvenated and reformed. And the CDC's performance during this pandemic, Dr. Fauci and NIH, right? I moved the goalpost Fauci. Remember, we're down on Dr. Fauci all the time because it's not evidence-based, it's not science-based, it's not. And today on Good Morning America, another one of his happy talk spin sessions. So I want to go back in time, Jack. I want to talk about exactly what happened. I want to get the doctor on that was on. I want to go back to this issue again. And then, Raheem, I also want you to jump in and contextualize this about the social media aspect of this, right? How they can just they went last night. I think they pulled down a bunch of. Left ours up because I think we had obviously some scientific evidence. I'm not saying the others didn't, but they pulled those down right away, and it shows you the power and their fear of social media, and particularly getting the word out on people's other ideas about this pandemic. So, Jack, we'll turn it over to you.
We're very pleased to have Dr. Elizabeth Vliet back on our show. She's a doctor based in Tucson, Arizona. She specializes in preventive medicine. She's been a doctor for over 30 years, very squared away. And she and I have discussed this many times about this idea of hydroxychloroquine, or otherwise benign drug historically being used on the front lines. We've had Dr. Zelenko on the same day that we had her on last week. We had Dr. Risch from Yale University, who is also an advocate. And now, perhaps unwittingly, Dr. Vliet has got herself on TV because of a tweet that we put out. But we'd like for her to be able to defend her position. And also, just preemptively, Doctor, one of the comments was about remdesivir. And I'd love to have your take on what the toxicity of that drug is compared to hydroxychloroquine with what we know so far. So, Doctor, take it away. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Jack. And that social media suppression of medical information is absolutely critically important. It's happening. They have already deplatformed Dr. Stella Emanuel, who spoke passionately. She's from West Africa. She knows hydroxychloroquine, used it her whole life and medical career. And she spoke passionately in Washington yesterday. And because she was bringing such powerful truth, which fits with my clinical experience as well, not as many patients, but exactly the same results. Start early, keep them out of the hospital, no deaths. It helps diabetics lower their blood sugar. They knew that 30, 40 years ago and were actually using it. So the point here is Dr. Emanuel's Facebook account was deplatformed last night. It's unconscionable interference with free speech. Our tweets on the medical information routinely get shadow banned or deleted. President Trump's information that he has sent out on good scientific studies from other countries, those get deleted. This is a huge freedom issue, and I'm very glad Steve Bannon brought it up at the beginning. But the public is being made by the orchestrated campaign in the media to discredit hydroxychloroquine. The public is being made to live in a state of fear about a drug that's been safely used for the last 65 years around the world, that even WHO called one of the most effective, safest, and least toxic drugs that they have on their list of essential medicines. It's sold over the counter in Africa, in Indonesia, and many places in Asia. It was in Mexico until this pandemic, and they ran short on supply. It was all through South America. It was over the counter when I was working in Chile. This is a safe medicine. The FDA's own safety record shows that. They all know that this safety record is unparalleled. It's probably safer than Tylenol in terms of the fact that it doesn't have the same risk that even Tylenol over the counter has. And then we come to remdesivir. In one study in the U.S., they showed a 23% finding of severe liver effects, and the company's own data showed a 6% respiratory failure rate in the 5-day treatment course and a 10% respiratory failure rate in the 10-day treatment course, and that's what it was designed to treat. The problem is we have two different diseases at the beginning of the illness when hydroxychloroquine works, which Fauci and the NIH team showed with SARS-CoV-1, and that shares about 80% of the viral genome with the SARS-CoV-2, which we're calling the disease COVID-19. And they knew 15 to 18 years ago that hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine had potent antiviral effects to block the virus and at the attachment to the cell and block the virus from entering, using the cell as a multiplication factory. So in the beginning, which is what most of the countries around the world are doing, is using it in the first 5 days of symptoms. That's kind of like treating a cold. If you send people home, the Fauci plan to have people come to the ER if they have symptoms and then have them go back home and wait and see if they got sick. And by the time they get sick and short of breath, then they're moving into a different disease. It's actually the inflammatory response and the extreme exaggerated inflammation is what's causing the acute respiratory distress syndrome to begin. Not everyone develops the cytokine storm that comes from that, but they can. And that's the point at which it's like the difference between a cold and pneumonia. You now have a different and more serious disease, and they've known that, and they've hidden that from the American public. The media has an orchestrated campaign to discredit that. Any of us that are speaking out, and there are several hundred doctors across the country trying to get this message out. I've been on multiple conference calls with many of them for months. I've been writing about it since February. And what we're seeing is that this information is being suppressed after the president correctly mentioned the studies from other countries showing hydroxychloroquine offered hope to treat the virus early. That's exactly what it does, and that's what the NIH and CDC showed and published in Virology, their own journal, in 2005. I found the study right away at the beginning of this. What we need to do is look at the fact that all of the studies that are getting all the press are done late-stage hospitalized patients. It would be analogous, I'm not saying it's the same disease, but it would be analogous to waiting until people are critically ill with severest form of pneumonia and then trying to throw an early medicine at them. Everybody knows you take Tamiflu at the beginning of a flu syndrome within the first 48 hours. All viral illnesses need to be treated early. Shingles, the herpes, flu virus, cold viruses, all of them. We need to start early. COVID is the same way. You start in the first 5 days. In fact, most Dr.
Vliet, we've got just 2 minutes here, so I want to just make sure we cover everything. Jack?
Doctor, I really want you to talk about this emergency use authorization from the FDA. The fact that this drug has been denied to people. There are 42 states in which governors have put restrictions on the use. What do we need to do today? You're in the Oval Office. You're talking to the president. What must he do today?
We're about 1 minute, Dr. Vliet.
President Trump issue an executive order immediately to get the governors off the doctors' back. We have doctors across the country being investigated by medical boards for prescribing a safe, approved, FDA-approved drug in use for 65 years. Issue an executive order to override the delays of the FDA and approve Henry Ford and Baylor Health System emergency use authorization. We need it today. We're losing about 1,000 people a day with this delay since July 1, when Baylor and Henry Ford urgently requested Dr. Hahn to issue an emergency outpatient use authorization. Get it done. We are losing American lives, and this lockdown is not working. We need to get early treatment out in the hands of the American people, the American doctors, and get the politicians and the governors off our backs and get the FDA to do what it knows is right based on their approving its safety 65 years ago.
Have to leave it there, but we're up against a hard break here. We're really grateful for you coming on here and talking to us about that. This emergency authorization is incredibly important right now, and the detail which Dr. Vliet and the other doctors we've had on is so incredibly important. It beggars belief that they're being censored by big tech right now. We'll be back. More hashtag War and Pandemic in just a moment.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Well, 2020 has been a gut punch for American business, and if you're going to succeed, you need every possible advantage. Smart companies run on NetSuite by Oracle, sponsor of this show and the world's #1 cloud business system. Get your free guide right now at netsuite.com/Bannon. Welcome back to this very special episode of War and Pandemic, broadcasting live from the Trump International Hotel in downtown Washington, D.C. for the Falkirk Center's Freedom Summit. Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, and Stephen K. Bannon.
Look, we're making news all over. In particular, when we go back to this Good Morning America piece where Stephanopoulos kind of called out the president's tweet. I want to talk about the technology part of it, but before we do that, Jack, what it gets down to is our guest on this hour kind of special you guys did the other day really went and took it to Fauci for what we've been saying. He's made all kind of conflicting, statements, conflicting, recipes for solutions here that turn out to be wrong. What we've wanted is Dr. Fauci from the beginning to be evidence-based, to be science-based, to be data-based, and to put that forward. And so let's go through. I think you've got a quick summary of what she said the other day about when she called him out, because I want to make sure we're going to obviously we're into this now, so we're going to push this out and make sure that this is something. But go
One
through
of
what
the
it
key
was.
things to understand, Steve, is that the National Institutes of Health, of which Dr. Fauci is associated, did a paper, peer-reviewed paper in 2005 studying the effects of hydroxychloroquine in cell cultures infected with SARS-1. She described that that's a disease that shares over 80% of the genome with SARS-2, COVID-19. So we know that this had an efficacy that we've known for 15 years. And I think one of the key things that she's been talking about is this idea of Dr. Fauci promoting remdesivir as if it is a magic bullet. And what we're finding out now, Steve, is that a significant portion of the patients who are treated with this drug end up with serious side effects, liver toxicity effects, that could be life-changing even if they recover. We know for a fact that millions upon millions of dosages of hydroxychloroquine have been handed out around the world. The World Health Organization did a study in 2017 on the cardiotoxicity of this drug, using several million people from Africa as part of the study, and they found no danger. I think one of the key things that we have to remember also is we had Dr. Risch, an epidemiologist from Yale University. This is not a guy with his hair on fire. This isn't Jack Maxey or Steve Bannon or Raheem Kassam. This is a very thoughtful fellow. And 2 days after he appeared on our show, he wrote an article in Newsweek magazine called "The Key to Defeating COVID." And he ends it with a very interesting paragraph that touches upon all these topics. He said, "In the future, I believe this misbegotten episode regarding hydroxychloroquine will be studied by sociologists of medicine as a classic example of how extra scientific factors overrode clear-cut medical evidence. But for now, reality demands a clear scientific eye on the evidence and where it points for the sake of high-risk patients, for the sake of our parents and grandparents, for the sake of the unemployed, for our economy, for our polity, especially those disproportionately affected. We must start treating immediately." And he is speaking of hydroxychloroquine.
Look, this is one of the most prominent guys in the country in this area. This is what's so outrageous about this. There's 147,000. We're going to breach 150,000 Americans have died by the CCP virus. And this is a way that, if your physician recommends it, obviously, can be used as a prophylactic, maybe in other parts of it too. And we have all kind of reports coming out of China that they've been using it, that particularly the higher cadre levels have been using it, right? It's one of the reasons it hasn't been spreading among a lot of the cadre, the senior levels. I don't understand why the president, this is why I wanted this briefing every day for the president to be around the Resolute desk and have Fauci and get these guys. Why is the head of the FDA not in the Oval Office with the president of the United States explaining why we don't have emergency use authorization? And then back up the Mack trucks. The Navarre and these guys have all this stockpile. Back the Mack trucks and the trains up and be shipping this stuff out to Florida, to Texas, to Arizona, wherever they're, do the targeted interventions. And one of the ways you do the interventions is get the prophylactic drug out there. It's time to stop the games. President Trump's, one of his favorite phrases is stop the games. I think right now we're in this kind of game playing. We got to stop it. There's enough. And you saw yesterday the physicians that Jenny Beth Martin brought together out in the Capitol. Thing went mega viral before Jack Dorsey and the crowd of the CCP-loving Twitter crowd executives pulled it down. But there's enough evidence out there today that if your physician recommends it, this ought to be something that you think about trying. But that's between you and your physician. But clearly, it's got enough scientific evidence now and enough support from these studies that came out at the Ford Institute that we did on the show last week to push this thing out. But now it's about taking action. And we should stop having this back and forth on Twitter and retweets and take action. If this guy Hahn, if he's the hang-up at the head of the FDA, interim head of the FDA, he ought to be brought in and explain that to me in the Oval Office, the president and his advisors. And I believe that the president should then make a command decision to basically make sure that this emergency use authorization, right, which is the thing that everybody, what's the EUA, everybody's hung up about, ought to be executed. And that to me can solve the problem. Then you can start shipping it to these states, and people can have their physicians start to recommend it or not.
Well, also, Steve, there's many examples around the world where these societies where hydroxychloroquine is sort of endemic because of malaria, where they're having much better mortality rates than,
100%.
say, the Northeast of America. There's a wonderful story, and I recommend everybody look into it, particularly the media out there who covered it at the beginning. There's a city, I think it's like the second or third largest city in Ecuador, called Guayaquil. They had 860 people a day dying of this disease. I remember the New York Times showed pictures of people laying dead in the streets, et cetera. They had no idea what to do. The mayor got together with the city fathers, and they bought massive amounts of hydroxychloroquine.
Look, we could go through, you showed me, and we can go through dozens and hundreds of examples of that. Here's the thing. It's either a pandemic or it's not a pandemic. What we've allowed the mainstream media and the opposition party forces to do is they pick and choose. It's a pandemic when they want it to be a pandemic, and it's not a pandemic when they don't. When you got the guys in the anarchists in Portland, in Seattle, and the Black Lives Matter crowd in Washington, D.C., they're not wearing masks. We know the thing explodes and how contagious it is. You never hear a peep about that because then it's not a pandemic. You got Fauci rolling the first pitch to the dugout at the Nationals the other day, but he's sitting up in the stands, no mask, with a couple of buddies. Not a pandemic, a couple of buddies. Here, we can't even have Posobiec. We got to put him up on the main stage. You can't even have 4 speakers right here because the Trump International is playing by the rules, and the Falkirk Center is playing by the rules, as they should, and taking every precaution they should. And so we're socially distanced. I got no problem with that. What I've got a problem with is that they cherry pick on the other side. The president's the president of the United States of America. You're the protagonist in the drama. You drive the action. People react to your driving the action. And action cannot just be driven on Twitter, as much as I love this show by retweeting the show. Call the guy in the FDA. Let's get them all in the room and make him defend in front of your top advisors in the room where it happens, to quote a recent book, right? In the room where it happens. Well, make this the room where it happens. Call him in. Let's get on top of this emergency use authorization and get on with it. If we can't do that, then let's drop it, right? I don't want to stop. Everybody should stop the whining. Let's take action. And if we want to save lives, from all the evidence I've heard from respected people at Johns Hopkins and Yale University, these are not lightweights. These are the heaviest people in the country. And the Ford Institute, the Ford Medical Center out there, the Dr. O'Neill, right, who couldn't come do media, that's their call. But their study, these other studies have been going on, then it seems to me the evidence is there, but drive the action and make something happen. This is American lives and American citizens. Remember, your death certificate does not say whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, whether you support Bernie Sanders, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Kevin McCarthy, right? It just doesn't. And that's why we got to pull together a nation. And this is game playing. And the president is I know he hates the games, and I would go back. Now I think you've got enough evidence, you've got enough backup, but it requires, to me, getting people in that room and forcing the action. And this is not just going and doing a briefing. We don't need another Kayleigh. Kayleigh does a fine enough job. Drive the action and then report on the actions taken. And I think, to me, this is a little bit of a defining moment. If you cannot, given everything that's been done about hydroxy, and clearly the temperature out there, that's why Jenny Beth Martin tells me they had like 17 million downloads or some insane amount before it was shut down. Yeah. And just a random observation, Mr. Raheem Gassam, I think they shut it down because they didn't want the word getting out. Right? I mean, it just wasn't random that they shut that down. Right. I mean, Raheem, talk about the part of the technology here. We got those guys coming to Capitol Hill, but this is once again where the social media aspect is trying to take away the power of the President of the United States. But to a degree, I think he may be walking into this.
Yeah, well, the big tech CEOs, at least Zuckerberg, Bezos, Cook, and Sundar Pichai, are coming to Capitol Hill on Wednesday for hearings, and the first hearings of their kind in about 22 years since the last time Bill Gates was here on Capitol Hill defending the extraordinary growth of Microsoft back then and the market share considerations. But I mean, the president's son, who retweeted this video from yesterday that went hyperviral, is currently suspended from...
When did that happen?
This morning.
You're telling me they suspended Don Jr.?
He is no longer able to log into his account and share things through his massive Twitter account, and all because of this, all because of retweeting this about the hydroxy, about these doctors, and about fact-based, evidence-based policy, which is what the political establishment, the media establishment keep claiming they are for, and keep censoring it when it comes from our side. Okay, we're going to go to a quick break here, but when we come back, we've got a packed out 90 minutes left with you guys today. Jack Posobiec, Raynard Jackson, Chris Fenton, Dr. Jan, Miles Guo, Stephen K. Bannon, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam, the hashtag War Room Pandemic on Parler, on Twitter. We want to hear your live feedback. We'll be right back.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
Well, in these turbulent times, you need every possible advantage you can get as a business owner. You need NetSuite by Oracle, a sponsor of War Room Pandemic, the world's #1 cloud business system. Smart companies run on NetSuite because it gives you the visibility and control over your e-commerce, your inventory, your HR, your financials, everything you need all in one place. Whether you're doing $1 million or hundreds of millions in sales, NetSuite lets you manage every penny with precision. Join over 20,000 companies who trust NetSuite to make it happen for them. They've actually surveyed hundreds of business leaders and assembled a playbook of the top strategies they're using as America reopens for business. So get your free guide, 7 actions businesses need to take now. Schedule your free product tour at netsuite.com/Bannon. That's netsuite.com/Bannon. You're back in the war room, or the war ballroom, here in the Trump International Hotel, the Falkirk Center's Freedom Summit. We're broadcasting live. And before I just throw it back to Steve and Jack Posobiec on the stage here, Jack Maxey, I know that Steve had a big burning question that just an answer, we need an answer on this. Is there enough evidence right now to push through for this emergency authorization use of hydroxychloroquine?
100%. The Henry Ford study showed a 51% reduction in mortality of hospitalized patients taking hydroxychloroquine versus those without. We've seen this around the world. The president needs to stand up, be tall, and take some courage here, because the evidence would support an emergency use authorization unquestionably.
On that note, I want to throw it over to the stage now. Stephen K. Bannon and Jack Posobiec, take us away.
You know, given the report we had last week, I would almost tell the president, I'd call the interim head of the FDA, and if he didn't make the decision, I think I'd get a new interim head of the FDA. This is serious. I mean, I think we're in an inflection point. This is either a pandemic or it's not a pandemic. You know, we've allowed the mainstream media and Fauci and these guys kind of define it on their terms. It ought to be defined on the terms of reality. You know, from facts come truth. I think that was Mao's great saying, right? Or Deng Xiaoping. From facts come truth. Let's get down to the facts. That almost 150,000 American citizens dead. And we can't pick and choose. There's enough scientific evidence from enough smart people and enough studies done from NIH to the Ford Institute up in Michigan and others, and prominent voices. Now this emergency use authorization the trigger ought to be pulled on this. And I think this is about driving action and not playing games anymore. There's just too many games being played. There's too many roadblocks being put into place. And I think it's time for action. I want to get into a whole bunch of this, but Raheem, I think you told us just before we went to break, Don Jr. has been suspended by Jack Dorsey and the team at Twitter. You know, when you look at the Chinese Communist Party, I've said from day one, you want to take down the CCP? I can take down the CCP in 90 days to 6 months. I got 2 weapons. You take down the firewall, social media, bang, they all start coming to the U.S. on social media platforms. That's a thermonuclear weapon pointed at the heart of the CCP. The other is U.S. dollar. But you look at the social media platforms, we've allowed Jack Dorsey, and now we're allowing Jack Dorsey and these guys to start to define the entire political process, not just the conversation. Tell me what was wrong, and we got to go back, we'll check in the war room, what was wrong with Jenny Beth Martin and the group of physicians that were up there yesterday on Capitol Hill, which is what Don Jr. tweeted out along with ours. The war room was not pulled down, right? But the others were pulled down. We got to get to the bottom of it because we're allowing Jack Dorsey to do it. Now, the tech guys are coming to Capitol Hill today. I know and want to get CCP and I want to get Portland and all of it, but I got Jack Posobiec up here. Tell me, those guys are coming to Capitol Hill today. You're finally getting some of the big tech guys up there. And I think the conservatives, and particularly the Austrian School of Economic guys, have made a major mistake in allowing these tech companies to get too big and too powerful and too out of control. The top, I think, 5 or 6, 7, 8 tech companies, market capitalizations today are greater than the entire stock exchange of Tokyo, with all the great industrial companies that the Japanese have. These have enormous power, and the power is only it's growing exponentially. And you're seeing what they're going to do with the power. They're going to choke down Don Jr. Don Jr. is not just a son of the President of the United States. He's one of the most prominent and powerful voices in the Trump movement, the conservative movement. Yet Jack Dorsey, some pencil-necked soy boy from San Francisco can determine and pull him down and take his voice off. Oh, you got a timeout. You can come back in 12 hours? I mean, this is what we've allowed to happen. So, Posobiec, what do you think ought to happen on Capitol Hill today? And I think it's time that the conservative movement really understand that these big tech companies, the Cato Institute and all these guys want to give them all the tax breaks and let them consolidate power. They're out of control. They've got to be treated like public utilities. I think they've got to be both broken up, just like we did the Bell system back in the 80s. They've got to be broken up, and they've got to be regulated. These are public utilities, and we've allowed these things to get out of control, and you've allowed Bezos and these guys to become wealthier than nations. And with that wealth, they're applying what? They bought the Washington Post. You see the Washington Post every day pounding the President of the United States. Don't think that's not going to happen with other of these multi-billionaires, right? They're just going to take this and go.
Well, and what's really interesting, Steve, and thanks again for having me on, is that you've now seen conservatives on the FCC, specifically Commissioner Brendan Carr. He penned a lengthy op-ed recently that was published in Newsweek talking about how these industries, these big tech platforms, now wield state-level influence over not only our country, but other countries that are entrapped in their networks. And so with that, the information that we consume, the places that we shop, where we go for our medical information, not just from obviously a policy standpoint from the president, but also on a personal basis. When someone's got an ailment, where do they go? They go to Google, they go to these WebMDs, they go to these places. So the level of influence that they wield over our country is fantastic. It's incredible. It's not something that's really ever been seen since the Industrial Revolution. And that's why the fact that this is an antitrust hearing is very important, because you've got Gates out there who's calling Zuckerberg to account for his statement or possible misstatement. He's published a criminal referral over misstatements about political bias. That's one thing that's out there. But the overarching issue is their level of control and their level of control of our data. People are now being tracked and data mined and understood on a level that they don't even know. You don't even know how much data your company is getting out of you, your phone is getting out of you, Google is getting out of you, Facebook is getting out of you, not to mention everything that TikTok has gone along with. And so that's something that Democrats and Republicans are now turning to face and say, you know what, this power of Silicon Valley over our country and over our people has to be addressed one way or another, and this is a legitimate function of government, and you're now even seeing conservatives come to the table on that.
Well, you have to have I've said for years, you have to have your own digital sovereignty, your own data sovereignty. You have to, your intellectual property, that all this data comes off of your actions. That is you should own that. And that should be, you should be in a third-party negotiated relationship with all this. If you negotiate to have it, then it's your choice. Then you guys set the terms of use to do it, but not just the way it's done today. Right? And this data and this digital sovereignty, the loss of your digital sovereignty has led to this situation. Also, in addition, let's be blunt. One of the reasons that the Trump movement doesn't have the heat it used to have is what they're doing to Don Jr. But they've done it more surreptitiously. They've used artificial intelligence. They've been working on this They've been working on this since the day they lost in November 2016. They were never going to allow again the deplorables, right? The people with the pitchforks ever be able to unite digitally like it was in the summer and fall of 2016. And they have systematically gone through, right? Gone through YouTube, gone through Twitter, gone through with artificial intelligence and made sure it's much more difficult to pull together if you're on the right. Right, you don't see that on the social networking, Steve, by these anarchists.
And not only that, but when Twitter was hacked just about 2 weeks ago, this massive takedown of Twitter, it exposed these tools that Twitter essentially acknowledged were true, that root level editors and administrators have over Twitter, talking about this tool panel that's available to them. When they go to any account, they can take over the account. They can disassociate it with your email address so you lose your two-factor authentication. They can blacklist you. They can put you on the blacklist. They can blacklist you from trending. The president was actually tweeting about this trending list recently. He said, why don't any pro-Trump things trend? He says, always the negative stuff that trends. Well, we've now seen that Twitter has an active blacklist. They've denied this for years, but it was plain to see, and it was something that was exposed actually as a byproduct of this hack. These Bitcoin guys got in. At least that's been the corporate line on that, and they got in to get on that. But the amount of information, the amount of direct messages, the amount of account takeovers of world leaders, Barack Obama's account, Joe Biden's account. They probably could have gotten access to President Trump's account if they tried hard enough and they weren't exposed. This is a huge, not only, as you talk about, a digital sovereignty issue, now it's a national security issue.
Yeah, because let's face it, some of these companies also, as you said, have the state level power. Raheem, I want to toss it back to you for a second. By the way, Jeff Warnick, I think, has a great piece in the American Conservative about this entire topic, and we'll have Jeff's a real piece of work, but he's one of the early guys into Bitcoin, very knowledgeable, and a hardcore libertarian. We'll have him on the show in the next week or two to explain this. But this is another massive issue that's right below the surface that we all have to galvanize around and bring it up. Raheem, today I want to toss back to you about not just about the hearings, but about this whole thing with Don Jr. Has there been any other communications from the guys around Don Jr.? Because I think this is outrageous to take his account down for retweeting what the doctors did yesterday on Capitol Hill.
Right, I'm going to read you a statement here from Andy Sarabian, one of the advisors to Donald Trump Jr. Twitter and Jack Dorsey have suspended Donald Trump Jr. for posting a viral video of medical doctors talking about hydroxychloroquine. Big tech is the biggest threat to free expression in America today, and they're continuing to engage in open election interference, full stop. That's a statement posted to Twitter by Andy Sarabian, the spokesman for Donald Trump Jr. And included in there is a screenshot of exactly what the president's son can see when he tries to log in and tweet. It reads from Twitter, "We've temporarily limited some of your account features." And then it goes into an explanation. "We have determined this account violated Twitter's rules." It says, "Violating the policy on spreading misleading and potentially harmful information related to COVID-19. Again, that was information that the president's son was retweeting based on the testimony of medical doctors here in Washington, D.C. yesterday. I also, Steve, want to bring to you guys' attention, it's a little hard to hear from the stage to hear, funnily enough, but also Silicon Valley and big tech people are very interested in what's going on in terms of the market share that's being held by all these companies. I'm looking at a few of the questions online that's coming out of Silicon Valley, and one of them that really caught my attention was that Amazon, for instance, should be asked something like this, quote, "In a 5-week period during the pandemic, your firm added the value of the world's largest firm by revenue, Walmart. If your firm can accrete the value of the largest firm in 5 weeks and money is power, then isn't your firm the most powerful private entity in history? Hasn't your firm reached a level of soft and economic power well beyond the point when the DOJ has historically taken antitrust action?" And I think it's not just Washington, D.C., it's not just conservatives all around the country that are interested in this. It is actually people in the tech sector who look at the stifling innovation that's taking place when Apple, for instance, heavily subsidizes Apple TV using all of its other products, doesn't allow others into the market in that regard. And there are just loads and loads. So we'll be watching very closely. Jack Posobiec, I know, will be watching very closely to see what happens on Capitol Hill in the next 24 36 hours with these big tech hearings. Okay, we've got to go to a quick break here now, but let me tell you something. If your name is Roland Martin, you're going to want to turn away now, because we've got Raynard Jackson joining us next on hashtag War and Pandemic. One of the great regular guests of the show, Stephen K. Bannon, Jack Posobiec, Jack Maxey, Raheem Kassam. Make sure you're hitting the share buttons online. We'll be right back. More War and Pandemic in just a second.
War Room Pandemic with Stephen K. Bannon.
The epidemic is a demon, and we cannot let this demon hide.
War Room Pandemic. Here's your host, Stephen K. Bannon.
The bid and the ask on the latest recovery bill on Capitol Hill is $1 trillion to $3 trillion. I want you to embrace this. These are numbers that are incomprehensible given what the United States federal deficit used to be just a couple of years ago. We've blown up the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve by $4 trillion with the bazooka to save the stocks and bonds and the real estate to get through this pandemic, this Chinese Communist Party pandemic. The world's financial systems right now are on fire, and you can tell something else is on fire is also gold. The best guys to get into the gold business look at precious metals and add it to your portfolio, whether you do it through your 401k, do it through your IRA, or do it in the physical possession, is Birch Gold. Now, gold is getting very close to breaching its all-time highs. I don't want to say it's a correlation between the time Birch Gold became a sponsor in that, but I think we helped a tad. Raheem, I'm going to turn it back over to you. Why don't you give the details of how our audience can become customers, clients, and participants in gold?
Well, thank you, Steve. You can contact the Birch Gold Group to request a free info kit on physical precious metals and see if diversifying into gold and silver makes sense for you. It's a comprehensive 20-page kit that reveals how gold and silver can protect your savings and how you can legally move your IRA or 401k out of risky stocks and bonds and into a precious metals IRA. So get your no-cost, no-obligation kit by texting Bannon, that's Bannon, to 474747. And for a limited time, you can see how you can qualify for up to $10,000 in free precious metals on your purchase. Text Bannon to 474747. I want to play now this clip from CNBC this morning, Squawk Box. Let's roll this clip.
In a recent speech by the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, seems like he's moved, or maybe the administration has moved closer to your viewpoint, Steve, on what relationships with China should look like, given some of what's happened in recent history with China. Is that fair to say?
I think it's even deeper than that. I think if you look at the series of 4 speeches, starting with National Security Advisor O'Brien in Phoenix back in earlier, I think in June, earlier in July, you look at him, FBI Director Wray, really the seminal speech given by the Attorney General Bill Barr, and then culminated at the Nixon Library on the 50th anniversary, or close to 50th anniversary of Kissinger's secret trip to China, which really drove the stake in Kissingerism. I think that this shows that the United States has a coherent and comprehensive strategy with taking on, not just containing, but I think taking on the Chinese Communist Party. And it's pretty broad-based, and it's breathtaking as comprehension, and it's how it's developed into an alliance of liberty, bringing in the United Kingdom, India, Japan, everything from the technological and information warfare the CCP has been running to the economic warfare, and hopefully to avoid kinetic warfare in the future. But I think from the South China Sea to the border of Chinese-occupied Tibet, to London with Huawei, to Washington, D.C., to the streets of Hong Kong, you're now seeing free people throughout the world standing up to the Chinese Communist Party. And I think it's going to be the greatest legacy of President Trump's 8 years in the White House.
Free people standing up throughout the world in the ballroom of the Trump International Hotel through the good offices of Liberty University, Jerry Falwell, Dave Bratt, Charlie Kirk, the Falkirk Center, because this is what's going to turn it around. Free people saying we're not going to take the spread of communism anymore, starting with Beijing, the Chinese Communist Party, ending in the streets of Seattle and Portland. I want to turn now to a dear friend and a China hawk for a long time, Raynard Jackson. Raynard, what has been the impact on the CCP virus not just in the minority community, but particularly minority entrepreneurs?
Well, it's been a devastating impact on the minority business community. And what I find amazing, Steve, is I'm trying to figure out whose side the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is on, because they claim to represent small American businesses, but yet why is it that Tom Donahue, the CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, why has he seemed to put the interest of China above American businesses, and especially when it comes to minority businesses? They are AOL. And I'm encouraging every minority firm that may be a member of the U.S. Chamber, cancel your membership, because they are not looking out for the interests of America. So here's the question I would ask the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and Tom Donahue. If you have to choose between making less profit and ensuring America's national security versus making more profit and diminishing America's national security, which would you choose? And unfortunately, I don't know what that answer is from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And so we got to start having American companies look out for America first, because I'm telling you, Steve, if the small minority business community catches a cold, guess what? The American economy is going to come down with pneumonia.
Okay, we have this recovery bill, stimulus, however you want to call it. It's up on Capitol Hill right now. It's $3 trillion from the Democrats, $1 trillion. This is the bid in the ass right now on this bill. What do you need to see in this to help minority entrepreneurs? Entrepreneurs, we say every day on the show, entrepreneurs are the vanguard that are going to lead us through this economic inferno to get us to the other side. What are you looking for? What are you arguing for that you need to see in this bill?
The number one issue by far is access to capital. This money that they're giving us now, and they did with the CARES Act, that's kind of a stopgap measure to just infuse us with some cash flow. But long term, we need permanent access to capital, and without that, you're taking away our lifeblood. So access to capital.
Is that more? Is it banks? Is it equity? All of the above? And
all of the above. What I find amazing is, Steve, these very banks that American government keeps bailing out, when it's time to loan money to small and minority businesses, they put their hands in their pocket and refuse to loan us money.
What am I missing about in the Black Lives Matter movement? You never hear anything about the black entrepreneurs. Where's the black entrepreneurs movement? Where's the black entrepreneurs' voice in this?
Oh, the black entrepreneurs will not be involved in Black Lives Matter simply because they're too busy trying to create jobs. And these guys are destroying jobs. And so Black Lives Matter is a front organization for George Soros and white liberal elites. And that's the story that has not been told. They put a black face out there, but all the decisions are being made by the puppet masters who are white liberal elites.
So, and the last thing, access to capital is the key for black and minority entrepreneurs, right? Whether it's bank lending or whether it's equity financing.
No question, and that's why I would love to see Larry Kudlow and Steve Mnuchin get more involved on that one issue.
All right,
let me toss it back to Raheem.
All right, we've got a break, but make sure you stick around. If you're watching us online, make sure you head over to the next YouTube live stream, Citizens of the American Republic channel. More War and Pandemic, Jack Maxey, Stephen K. Bannon, Raheem Kassam, Miles Guo, Dr. Yan, Chris Fenton returns in just a moment.